Welcome to Creamer Media's Polity. I'm Brad Doubleman. I'm at the Centre for Policy Studies in Braamfontein to meet with Senior Research Analyst Aubrey Machiki to discuss the outcomes of the recent ANC-NGC meeting. Welcome, Aubrey. In your column, you say that advocates of BEE were the biggest losers in the NGC due to the ANC's deferral of the nationalisation debate. What is your take on the way forward for the debate?
Well, the NGC has decided that the National Executive Committee of the ANC should do research into whether it's a feasible idea. But when one looks at the arguments that were advanced against it, it is clear there was an attempt to turn the debate into a moral debate, particularly when the question was posed whether the suggestion in the demand for the nationalization of mines is that the state should use taxpayers' money to bail out owners of private mining companies at the expense of the citizens' needs in areas such as health and education. Now, that's a powerful moral argument against which I think it is going to be very difficult to develop a counter. My suspicion is that in the ANC, there is very little appetite for nationalization in general and the nationalization of mines in particular. And the sense we got at the NGC is that the advocates of nationalization did not put up a persuasive argument, and the best they got out of the NGC was a non-resolution, which amounts to the retention of the status quo.
Zuma emphasized the need for internal discipline and seemed to put the Youth League in its place. Can you comment on the irony in terms of the circumstances that Jacob Zuma came into power?
Well, what's interesting about Zuma emphasizing the need for discipline is that in the period leading up to Polokwane, there seems to have been an effort to step outside the disciplinary framework of the ANC in order to remove Mbeki. But the unintended consequences of that decision is what Zuma and the ANC have been struggling with ever since, because we've been seeing growing ill discipline, not only in the ANC Youth League, but in the ANC itself, and to some extent extending to the alliance. The irony, therefore, is that it is the very same climate of ill discipline which brought President Zuma to power, which now he is trying to stamp out.
It seemed as if Zuma was trying to keep all alliance partners happy. What is the state of the alliance after the NGC?
Well, I think we must look at the NGC as a single event in the life of the ANC and the alliance. It's quite clear that Zuma, amongst other things, sought to achieve two things: to neutralize the ANC Youth League, but at the same time avoid a head-on clash with the left-wing partners of the ANC, that is COSATU and the SACP. And it did this by taking the sting out of the debate on the need for a new economic growth path. And this he did by postponing that debate to a period after the NGC, and this will take place in cabinet and in an alliance summit, possibly before the end of the year. But what he is doing, of course, is to postpone the inevitable, because when one looks at the differences between the SSCP and COSATU on the one hand, and Zuma's administration on the other, it does seem that some of the differences, particularly over economic policy, are irreconcilable, which means going forward, we can expect further tensions between the ANC and its left allies.
In terms of a new economic growth path advocated by COSATU and the SACP, has Jacob Zuma delayed an inevitable economic policy shift, or has he affirmed the current status quo?
Well, I have never bought into the idea that Zuma has actually shifted policy to the left or has such an intention. Because if you look at what happened in Polokwane, as I've said before, Polokwane was about a rift between two representatives of the establishment, that is Zuma and Mbeki. And the suggestion I have been making is that these two men, actually in terms of their policy orientation, are the same. And therefore the expectation that Zuma would shift policy to the left was an unrealistic one. which means after Polokwane, the left themselves labored under the illusion that the Zuma administration would shift economic policy to the left. This is not going to happen. In fact, if you look at the ANC, one of the reasons the left is arguing that it should be the alliance and not the ANC which should determine the content of government policy is because they realize they are too weak to win majority positions for their policy demands in structures of the ANC, and therefore an attempt at winning those policy battles in the alliance is a shortcut aimed at obviating their obvious weaknesses when it comes to reaching a position of influence in the structures of the ruling party.
Thank you, Aubrey.
You're welcome.